The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
USAA. This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello everyone, welcome back to a special April Fool's Day edition of Underrated. This is a podcast where we discuss films that are underrated, underappreciated, and ones that have slipped under the radar and passed most people by. I am your host, Derek McDuff, and joining me is returning guest, Kusrosh Jozavi. How's it going, Kusrosh?
If you feel it, chase it.
Yes,
sorry,
yes.
I had to.
No,
thanks for having. Thank you for having me, Derek. I couldn't help myself.
Yeah, that was perfect. That was so good.
It's always a pleasure to be here with you, talking about films, and what better way? This is almost like an anniversary in our own weird way, because the first time I was on was for an April Fool's episode.
It was, yeah. We talked about Morbius on my other podcast, Infinity Stones and Dragon Bones. So yeah, wow. I was like, you know what? Kusrosh knows his way around an April Fool's episode.
Yeah, I'm your guy.
Before we get into it, what did you want to let the people know about yourself?
Yeah, for those that haven't, maybe not be familiar with me, I have been on nearly every one, if not every one of Derek's podcasts, and I will continue to keep that MO going. It's become part of my brand. But if you don't find me on Derek's shows, I am running my own shows at the KJP Show. It's where I do YouTube videos talking about indie games and game devs. They don't get the rep that they deserve, and I think that I wanted to make a space where I can uplift them and celebrate and elevate them any way I can. And then I have a podcast that I feel like it's either out or it's coming out soon called Save Point Stories, where I talk about the connections people have with their games and personal connections and interviewing different guests. One such guest is in this room right now. Hint, hint, it's your current host. It's Derek. He had the pleasure of being one of my season 1 guests for my Save Point Stories, and I'm very excited for folks to listen to those. So please check that out. Other than that, you can find my writing across the internet. I write for a few different outlets about game reviews and conversations. So yeah. I'm a little bit of everywhere.
You're
I'm like a twister. I just blow by.
just sign one in every which direction, you know.
Yeah, you never know. This ain't my first rodeo.
Just tearing it up everywhere. But yeah, good stuff. I had a blast being on that, talking about Majora's Mask. Very, very excited for that. I probably listened to it by now, or the early episodes of it by now. So very, very excited for that show. But yeah, man, as you alluded to, the movie that we're talking about here is going to be Twisters, but specifically, we're going to be talking about the experience of seeing Twisters in 4DX, because, like I said, this is an April Fool's episode. I always try to do something a little bit interesting with the April Fool's ones in the past. I've done so bad. It's good movies. This year, I was like, you know what? I want to do something else. I want to do a very specific kind of movie, because this is a movie that I saw. I don't know that this is the greatest movie, but maybe it is the greatest movie in watching it in a very specific format, which you and I both did.
Yeah.
That would be, of course, we said Twisters, 4DX, the sequel to the 96 one. This is the 2024 one, directed by Lee Isaac Chung, based on a screenplay by Mark L. Smith, based on a story by Joseph Kosinski. But yeah, this movie, it was a hell of a ride. And Kusrosh, I saw that this movie made, specifically in 4DX, your top 10 list.
It did.
What did you think? Like, tell us about the movie and the experience in that theater in that format.
Okay, so let me set the scene. First, I remember this movie coming out, and I was on the cusp of like, okay, I want to see this. I don't know if it'll be good or whatever. I had also, I'm trying to think. This was also I may be mistaken here, but because there was maybe one movie before, but I think this was my first 4D. Did this come out before Borderlands?
Yes, because Borderlands was in August.
Okay, this was my first 4DX film ever, and
Oh, wow.
I had heard when it initially released in 4DX, I had heard all the talk of it and all this stuff. I was like, oh man, I missed out. I'm so bummed. And they did a return. Like there was one of those things where the demand is there, much like Morbius. They brought it back. You know, the parallels here.
It's all coming together.
It's all coming together. But yeah, they brought it back, and I was trying to find any showtime for that. It was 1 week. 1 week it was brought back for, and every showtime was booked in my area. And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I was trying to go with a friend of mine, and we were both like, we wanted to go for the 4DX. We were like, this has got to be fun.
Yes,
yeah. And so we were able to get a showtime that like by miraculously worked for both of our schedules and everything, and I loved it. It was we were there was again unsure of how 4DX really operates, besides a little bit of like I knew the movement of the seats and I knew a little bit of everything, but in terms of like I typically like to get popcorn and drinks, but with this one I'm like, do I? Maybe I should get something bottled so I can like seal it. Maybe the popcorn should be eaten beforehand. We had some discussions of like, what's our strategy going into this? What's our strategy? And we also were like, let's grab a quick drink before, just like add a little bit of like just to the edge of like having fun. And man, I was laughing the entire time. It was such I got so giddy. I was like, this is hilarious. And everyone in the theater was like that. It felt like a 2 hour-ish, 2.5, 2. Yeah, it was around 2 hours experience of like almost like a Universal or Disney ride.
Yes.
Where you're just like, hey, okay, here's a cool like experience Megatron or experience this thing or whatever, or Star Tours. But instead of like 15 minutes, it was like a feature film. And everyone in the theater, every time it finally like mellowed out, everyone was laughing their ass off, picking their purses up, grabbing their belongings, checking to see if their phone fell out of their pocket. It was an absolute joy. I was dying of laughter. It was so much fun. And I was like, oh, and the story wasn't too bad. It was okay.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience. This wasn't my first 4DX movie. It was my second, because I had seen, with a friend, we had seen Haunted Mansion in 4DX, which I was like, oh, okay. This is a theme park ride. Let's see it like a theme park ride. It's based on a ride. Let's go and see it like, right. Which was a fun time. And I ended up, I think, a big part of that reason I like that movie more than most people is because I did see it in that format. And so when this came around, it was like, okay, we clearly have to see this in 4DX. It was before it was like really being like, this is the old way to see this movie. But we were like, okay, like this seems like it's going to be pretty cool. Yeah. And, we go see the movie, we settle in, and I don't really remember the first one that much. I don't have a lot of love for this franchise or this movie. I remember liking it when I was a kid. But I remember the first one also had a reputation of being like, wow, this movie is like so cool in the theater, and it doesn't like translate. Like the cow doesn't work as well once you get to when you watch it on a small screen. So I was like, yeah, that is the only way to watch this movie. And you just get in there, and for people who don't know, 4DX is a you kind of like talked about it a little bit, but I'll give more details. Is okay, so you sit in like these. It's a specially crafted theater where all of the seats just jostle you. They shake you around anytime something is like happening on the screen that's big, and it'll shake you up. And it's all precise. It's not random. It also does a lot of other things. It'll squirt you in the face with water during like rain or water scenes or whatever, which you can turn off. You're gonna say
partially. Well, partially. There's an immediate one that's targeted per seat that you can toggle off, but there is a room specific sprinkler that you cannot toggle off.
Right, that's fair. Which I would never want to turn on off anyway. Like I'm paying the extra like $10 or whatever. You got to hit me in the face with some water. You know, I want it. But it also does like it'll do smoke will come in. There'll be like there's fans that do wind. You know, there's like lightning effects that happen. Like it'll be strobing whenever there's like a light. And this was
sense.
Sense. And this was absolutely the perfect film. It felt like this was crafted specifically for that. And you put it so well because I said the exact same thing where it was like, this is a theme park ride. It's like Star Tours or Universal Ride or something. But instead of being 10 minutes and then it just like you drop down and then Optimus says, you saved the Earth or whatever and you get, out of there. Which ironically enough, there was a actual theme park ride called Twister's Ride It Out that was apparently a lot like this. But this is a 2-hour experience, and it really speaks to like, hey, maybe this 4DX thing, which seems like a gimmick, can be pretty fucking great. And I remember it literally knocked my hat off. I lost my hat for a chunk of this movie because that first scene, it just like, this movie for people who haven't seen it. And I'm sorry, because usually I'm like, hey, if you haven't seen it, you go and watch it. You can't watch it in 4DX anymore. Sorry, guys. Gone. It's gone. They brought it back once.
It blew by.
Yes.
Sorry. But, I'm going to make a lot of jokes.
Yes, please. It's an April Fool's Day episode. We got to keep them coming. It knocks my hat off. And I was like looking for it the whole movie. Somehow I ended up sitting on it. I don't know what happened. But like the movie, it just kept going and rolling and rolling. And I remember that first scene happened, right? The first scene, which is like, you watch and you're like, okay, I've seen the first Twister. I know this is going to be the scene where it's going to be tragic. Her boyfriend's probably going to die.
Something.
And you're like, okay, you see some people that you recognize. Like, is it McKenna? Oh, Karina Shipka is in it. And you're like, oh, Karina Shipka, yeah. Like there's a couple faces you recognize. And the Twister starts happening and you're just going shaking the fuck up. And then somebody just gets like sucked way the fuck up. And it's like, and it like shakes it back. And then like a truck hits somebody. It's like, bam, you get shucked to the side. And the entire theater, a sold out, packed house is just cracking up the entire time. And then it ends with this really harrowing like sequence where it just kind of fades to black. And she's like, the main character is just like walking all sad. There's not a dry eye in the house. We're all laughing our asses off. And what
you're all catching your breath.
Exactly. It's what should be a very, very serious scene. Yeah. And I did rewatch a little bit of it to see how it held up. I was like, you know what? I can't watch the whole movie because it's not the same. But I did watch at least the beginning of it. And it does, it does play a lot more somber and serious when you're just like watching it alone on TV. But when you're in that theater, and this, I think it does something that by the way, check this episode out when it drops a week on the Patreon, sign up for the Patreon. We talk about a 3D and how impactful and important that is. We're talking about Avatar. And this feels like this is also a real argument for the theatrical experience.
I remember. So this is. I need to retract a few statements of what I was saying. I was looking at my records. So I need to preface. The first time I was really like, oh, I should consider 4DX, and it hits. You just hit on one of the mentions. You mentioned Avatar. I remember seeing clips of people watching The Way of Water in 4DX, and to really talking about like that was an interesting experience. It was a little bit like testing, quote unquote, the waters. A little bit of like, oh, I'm like maybe consider this, and then I mixed it up. Twisters did come out before, but because this re-released, it was after Borderlands. And I remember my friend and I were like, let's go try 4DX with Borderlands. And that movie, the only reason it was moderately entertaining was because of the 4DX. And it felt like, do you remember Matrix where he's getting the shit kicked out of him by Myth? And like in the room of the Nebuchadnezzar, his body's just like jostling.
Oh yeah.
That's how that movie was translating 4DX for Borderlands, because it was only fights and fist fights and stuff.
Yeah.
And it has like a massage gun in your back and you're just like getting pummeled essentially. I was like, that wasn't a good experience. We need Twisters. We need Twisters for like the proper palate cleanser. And then that's when we got ready for it. So I just quickly wanted to say that. But then to your point here of like, it did. So I have to say like, the way I very much feel like they did it with 4DX in mind, because the tempo of like how the whole film translated, it starts with such a jarring and crazy experience, just to be like, hey, we're gonna get there, but then it goes back to a calm point, and then like at that point I was frothing at the mouth. I was like, okay, when are you gonna give me that again? I want to hit that hit again.
Yeah.
And it starts to like slowly build a tempo towards that again every time they do an adventure. I was like, okay, stop with the talking and get to like another thing. And it would do a little bit. It's like, okay, we're gonna go off road a little bit. I'm like, okay.
It's like Glenn Powell's driving. You're kind of like bouncing around. You're like, all right.
Like, okay. Building a little bit of foreplay. Cool. And then like you're seeing a twist. You're like, okay, it's kind of like it's the room. It was so, at least in my location, it was so well like translating of like subtly cranking that up. And then whenever you had those big moments of like similar to the very beginning at numerous, and even at the end at where like really crescendos, it was just nonstop. I was like, yeah, woo! Just like I was like, hell yeah! Like if you feel like, oh my god, if you feel it, I was like, I am chasing it now.
Yes. Oh, because it really is just like a thrill ride. It is nuts. Like, and, you know, it gives the peaceful moments are just enough for you to be like,
to reset, to calibrate.
Because if it was just
pick
like
up all your
shaking you
belongings.
yeah, exactly. Because if it's just shaking you nonstop, you know, you're just kind of like, you know, like, what is this?
How nauseous am I gonna get?
Yeah, it lets you like you said, catch your breath, right, and lets you reset, get your equilibrium back, and then start to get excited for like, okay, here we go again. This is gonna happen again. And it's funny because you talked about the re-release. I did see this when it first came out. When it re-released, though, they also re-released the original Twister, which I in 4DX, which I had not seen since the 90s. So me and my friend, past and future guest Marion, who had seen this in 4DX, were like, okay, let's go back and rewatch the original Twisters. And it is it's not quite as good as this one in 4DX.
Okay.
But I think it's like the next best thing, because it is a lot of like Helen Hunt being chased around by a Twister, and like she's getting sucked up, and then Bill Putnam's got to put the belt on. You know, I think there is a little bit more of like in betweens, just like dead spaces and stuff, where they're going to like the ants farm and she's making breakfast and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a question about that. I have a very important question.
Yeah.
That breakfast scene, very famous for me, very iconic.
Yes.
How was the 4DX treatment of that? Did they spray gravy in your face? Did they like put aromas of it? Because that scene, I was like, man, it's just a family. They're all passing food. I was like, oh my god, I can't imagine how that was on 4DX.
They didn't really do that much. I feel like it didn't.
Okay.
You know, I think there might have been a little smell-o-vision. You know, which shout out. You love some smell-o-vision. Rest in peace, by the way. We can't be talking about the theatrical experience with things punching you in the back and shaking your seat and spraying you with water without mentioning a pioneer in this, and a movie that was really impactful, which is Muppet Vision 3D, which is sadly closed in California a little bit ago. It is now closing at it's either closed or closed by the time this episode is out, closing in Florida. I've been seeing a lot of great tributes, so shout out to the one of the OG 4DX experiences, which is Muppet Vision 3D. And I'll always also hold a soft spot for Kusrosh. Did you ever go on It's Tough to Be a Bug at California Adventure?
I wish I did. I missed out.
That was that. If you want to talk about good smells, nothing compared to the smells that were hitting your nostrils but this was a 2-hour version of that. So
oh my god, like every minute of it, on top of like the building, like they didn't even use all the features in the beginning part. What you were alluding to, like the smoke that was coming out, like that was they saved that. It was like levels to this of, hey, now we're gonna start doing some lightning, some wind in the room, some rain. I'm like, what? You guys can do that? And then on top of that, there would be little bits of smoke coming out of in front of the screen, like almost like Wizard of Oz-esque. And I'm like, what else are they doing in here?
When you thought you'd seen it all, they hit you with some new shit.
And we're talking spoilers, right?
Yes, full spoilers.
So nothing will be as ingrained in my head from last year as they are in the final parts of the film. She's trying to chase the tornadoes and stuff, and everyone else is like, there's a mix of all the different characters, securing and protecting people in the city, and others trying to go out and remedy things. And where do the people that are getting secured go? They go inside a movie theater.
Yes, I was gonna bring this up. Go on.
And they go inside the movie theater. I'm like, what is about to happen? And as soon as I see them in the theater, I'm like, what's happening? This is pretty cool. And then the roof of the movie theater goes off. And that was where our theater, every knob on the 4DX effects were cranked to the max. I'm like, yeah. I felt like Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan. I was like, yes. It was so good. I was dying of laughter and tears. It was so hilarious and perfect. It was such. I don't know how. I would love to know more about 4DX's approach, whether it's a pre-programmed thing or if it's kind of like someone orchestrating it and tailoring the experience. But whoever or people, if it's a group or if it's an individual, like just masterwork. Like it needs its own category in award nominations because that was amazing. It was beautiful.
It's so good. And yeah, like you said, that finale, being in the movie theater, and you're in a movie theater where it feels like you're about to be sucked out of it by a tornado, and that like all these outside elements really hit so hard. And you know, in the original Twister, obviously they have the drive-in scene, and it's like, okay, cool, like here's like a thing, an homage to movies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But here, since it's in the finale and you're in 4DX, and you're like, I remember turning to Marion at some point and be like, wait a minute, they're in, and it makes no sense, by the way, why they would even go in that theater. Like, we've got to get the people inside the theater. I was like, okay.
To counter this, one of the other reasons I have such a strong bond with both of these films is the setting is in Oklahoma, and I'm born and raised in Oklahoma, and so I recognize some of those places and some of those cities.
Oh, really?
And I was like, and I can't speak to all the cities, but like some areas, that's all you had. Like some towns were so small and there's so little going on. That's all you really had. So
all right,
I'll put a little asterisk there as like,
fair enough. I retract my criticism. But yeah, it's so cool because you are like watching, like you're in the theater and it feels like you're about to be sucked up because you're watching the people in the theater just getting like fucking sucked up and stuff. And since like to the point where like I already made the episode art for this so people can see it. Like I was like, well, what am I gonna do to emphasize that this is not, we're just not talking about Twisters, we're talking about the specific 4DX thing. And I was like, well, I gotta have that being sucked out of the theater because that's exactly how you feel watching this movie.
And again, with the history of me being from Oklahoma, it's a very memorable part of my life, not for always the best reasons. I didn't really particularly like living there. And so it was a little bit of a cathartic, and in a fictional safe space, I was like, hey, I remember that town. You know, I didn't like that area. I didn't like that thing. I was like, okay, yeah, it's okay. Like, let the Twister go. No,
that's fine. Wipe it off.
It was just like okay, that was cathartic. I don't wish ill will towards anyone, but like in this movie with how crazy the tornadoes were getting, all right, we can enjoy a little bit of the immersion.
Yeah, and I remember like watching it afterward, and I was like, well, I just can't watch that movie again because it will never be the same. And I always rewatch movies with a podcast, and I said I watched maybe about half of it, and I was like, it's not. I'm glad I'm getting some of the plot beats and stuff back, but that's not what this episode is about, really.
I will say, Glenn Powell was, for the casting of this, he was like the perfect, like his character and how he channeled it worked so well for what the story and the energy that this film was bringing out in the 4DX. It worked so well for me of like his just like, he had a bit of a soft spot, but that like if you feel it, chase it. His YouTube crew and all that everyone. I was like the sensationalism. I'm like, all right, this is kind of leading into that. This is cool.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I want to put a pin in that because I do want to kind of talk about the movie itself a little bit because we've mostly talked about the movie in 4DX, which is obviously but I do want to answer a question you brought up a little bit ago, which was like, is it like on site? Is it pre-programmed? And it is something that is pre-programmed, but for every specific film. They do have, 4DX does have technicians that like go in, like watch the movie and like are like, okay, this is going to move here. This is exactly when the strobe is going to happen. So they already have it like programmed. And I'm not sure if it's like, because I think most of the 4DX theaters are pretty uniform, but there might have to be different variations. I don't know the minutia of that, but I know that like all the showings are pre-programmed. There's not somebody like with a joystick or something. But I think it really speaks to like how well and how like accurate this company is like really making the movements, because you do feel like even like small stuff would happen. Like somebody would like set a drink down and it'd just be like the tiniest vibration.
Well,
it was really well done in that regard, I think.
In the point you're making, there were moments where it wasn't so much big stuff happening, but more so like there was an emphasis on rustling of feathers or something just blowing by.
Yes.
The characters, and the seats have little jets on either side of the ear, and it would sometimes like like if something's ricocheting or blowing by them, it would blow by you. And I was like, whoa, I was like that attention to detail was pretty cool.
Yeah, like Daisy Edgar Jones would be like, she'd do her like thing where she's like, which way is the wind blowing you through a little
oh my God.
in your ear, you know, and you're like, oh, you feel like you're like, yes, it's this way.
Forgot that.
The twisters are going this way.
That. She could read them.
She was like the wind talker of the fucking twisters and shit like that.
The
oh
Avatar.
my God. Yes.
The Avatar's from Oklahoma.
Yes, the Avatar's from Oklahoma. But yeah, you being an Oklahoma boy, and we talking about the Glenn Powell, the Daisy Edgar Jones of it. Yeah. Let's talk about the actual movie itself a little bit.
Okay.
What did you think about Twisters?
It was fun, honestly. Like again, like the premise was pretty simple. I went in not expecting this like nuanced drama of interesting tense plots and all these things and threads. But given what they were doing, I was like, okay, we got this person, like you said, trope, had a traumatic incident, and now she's like trying to find her place again and regain her footing and crosses paths. Really, it was Tyler's crew that I think it's Tyler's crew. Yeah. Tyler Owens and his crew and like the eclectic bunch, and they had there was that journalist.
Shout out to Katie O'Brien, by the way. Oh, Ben, that was one of my notes, was just Ben the journalist, but like he's so fucking great. But yeah, also Katie O'Brien, wanted to shout her out. She's one of my new favorite actresses.
It was so good just getting all of them and seeing that story, and there was enough to like get me going. It was more so when it got into like the wind thing that I was like, okay, what? Yeah, sure. What? Sure. At this point, honestly, whatever. But
right.
I found that fun. I found the sensationalism of it fun because in the original there were still like cowboys and yeehaw and everything, but they were all kind of very much like, hey, we're chasing them for a purpose, and like they make this other group thrill. They show many other enthusiasts in this world of like this in this world where there's so many storm chasers, and there's the intellectual ones, there's the company boys, and it was almost Mad Max-esque in like in a weird way.
I get what you're saying though.
We have the intellectual scientists that are like corporately backed, and we have the ragtag bunch of quirky misfits, and then we have the crazy ones that are just like they're out there for YouTube hits, and I'm like, what? There's what? Okay, I'm in it. Like you've set a world lore up enough for me to just turn my brain off and just ride with it. And again, if you feel it, chase it. I felt it, so I was just like, take me for the ride.
No, I agree, because it was fun. It wasn't a plot that set the world on fire. The plot is not why you watch this movie. But yeah, I think there's some interesting characters. I think that like we said, Tyler's crew is pretty great. And then you have like Daisy Edgar Jones is I think pretty captivating. She's a really good actress. This is the first time I'd really seen her in anything. Since then, I've watched the show that she was on with Paul Mescal, Normal People, which is I highly recommend. So I think she's a really great actress, and it's weird because in rewatching it, I was like, oh yeah, she's actually doing. I mean, you can tell me if she's doing a good accent or not, but it sounded like a good accent. She's actually like Irish, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she's not bad.
But yeah, I think it was like, it's what I kind of want from like a legacy sequel like this, where it's like, okay, a lot of legacy sequels are kind of awkward because it's like, how do we bring back like the original crew and what they've been doing for 20 years and they haven't grown or evolved at all. And, this one, I would have liked to have seen Helen Hunt maybe in some capacity. I guess the reason that didn't happen because she's like, I want to direct it. And people are like, no, probably not the vibe we're going with. But I think it's like, okay, you're basically telling the same story that you did with the old one, but this is like a kind of new version of it with some twists and turns. I like that. Daisy starts on what is essentially the bad guy team from the first one.
Yeah.
Where it's like Carrie Elwes's evil storm. Like, I love that there's evil fucking storm chasers in all of these movies. There's like
because they're preying on insurance policies.
Yeah. There's like storm chasers who are doing it for like the right reasons, the thrill of it. We're gonna shoot fireworks into the, that shit. And then you have the ones who are like I'm like, there's the bad guy who's so clearly maniacal and evil from the moment you see him, where he's like, this guy is evil. I'm like, and I just remember turning to Mary and being like, I think this guy is working with the Twisters. Like, he was just so over the top and evil. It's like, but then you have the whole just really fun crew, and I think that there is actually like a really strong romance and connection between Daisy Edgar Jones and Glenn Powell. Kate and Tyler have a good thing. Anthony Ramos is kind of whatever, but then you've got Superman in this. Like, there's like a great behind the scenes. He gets cast as Superman while he was on the set of this, and you can see like Daisy Edgar Jones and like all those people kind of congratulating him. David Cornsweet, that's his name. He's one of the evil guys in this.
Yeah.
And I love like the scene where like she goes back home and he sees the science project, and it's all very contrived, but it's a lot of fun. It's enough to get you through the 2-hour theme park ride without feeling exhausted or anything. The one criticism I have is, why the fuck is there no kiss at the airport with Paul Scheer and everything that happens, and he drills his... I'm like, just fucking kiss her. Am I crazy in that?
I don't know. Yeah, the way they alluded to it, I think I could easily see that happening. At the same time, I think, and I was going to make a comment of like, there was a film I saw many years ago. It's one of my favorites, Pacific Rim. And that,
would you rather die here in a Jaeger?
But they have the two of the main protagonists that end up piloting Gypsy Danger together is a guy and a girl. And I think in typical Hollywood fashion, one would see them as being like, oh, they're gonna have a romance, and they don't. They just have a strong platonic relationship, and the way they danced around in this obviously sets it up for a romance. I could have easily seen it have gone without it and still very much enjoyed it. But since they chose to go down that path, I was like, that was a little odd. That it did stand out to me. I'm like, what?
Yeah, because like I agree. I like that Pacific Rim doesn't have a kiss when they're like on that life raft or whatever. And like, I think that works for that movie. Because it just seemed like they had a very like platonic, like almost like sibling like bond in that movie. This movie, I was like, are they gonna fuck? Like, what is gonna happen? Like,
I only got to that feeling. I like throughout the movie was like an unsure level of how involved that was going to be until they went to her house and they did the science experience stuff. That's where I felt like, yeah, they're leaning harder into this, and it's becoming more of
a total enemies to lovers trope that they were setting up, And apparently, and who am I to question the master? But apparently, it was a note from Spielberg. They were originally going to kiss. And Spielberg, who was a producer on this movie, is like, don't have them kiss. But I'm like, you had the whole airport scene that happened. I don't know. It kind of, I was kind of like, that was my one thing. I was a little bit like, what the fuck?
Okay. I did appreciate Anthony Ramos's the relationship him and Daisy Edgar had, Daisy Edgar Jones, because they were two friends from an original group. And that, when they went through the horrible disasters and where that, like how that continuously got explored over the film. It wasn't, I was worried that it was once he was found out to be siding with the villains, he was going to be written off to the side and that's it. But they just kept involving him and seeing him change and shift. It was a little refreshing. I'll say that for a movie where I wasn't expecting any real nuances or any real like new directions. It was just following tropes and stuff. That was something that I found pretty refreshing, is their relationship as friends and history. And everything they've been through and how that's shaped them, how they went on that journey, how they kind of, through the lies and stuff. I was like, okay, not bad. Again, pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think my favorite fan theory to explain why nothing happened between them. And if you let me know if you've heard this, but the fan theory is because he like you alluded to, there's that whole scene where like he goes back to her childhood home and they kind of have a lot of chemistry. But he shows up first, right? And so the fan theory is that he gets in the night before, and the mom, Marana Tierney, who fantastic in this movie, great actress. She's great as the mom. The theory goes that he hooked up with her, so he's like, well, I can't hook up with their daughter now, because I hooked up with their mom, so that would be crossing the line. So I kind of like, you know what, I'll ascribe to that theory. That'll be my headcanon for the reason they never hooked up, because he's like, you know what, that would be crossing the line.
Okay.
It's time for basketball, and Uber Eats is dropping deals on game day favorites to keep you locked in on the action. Like when you're craving a buzzer beater, but also buffalo wings. Or when an upset makes you want to ugly cry into a pizza. And right now, Uber Eats has game day deals from McDonald's, Popeyes, Pizza Hut, Wendy's, and hundreds more local favorites. So you can keep your eyes on the ball and your hands on a hamburger. Order now, only on Uber Eats. Product availability varies by region. See app for details.
Switch to Verizon Business and get more from your internet without paying more for your internet. Get LTE Business Internet starting at $39 a month when paired with a Business Unlimited smartphone plan. That's unlimited data, and with it, unlimited possibilities. Start saving today with Verizon Business, ranked #1 in small business internet customer satisfaction by J.D. Power. Starting price for 25 megabits per second internet plan with savings, plus taxes, fees, and economic adjustment charge. Terms apply. For J.D. Power 2024 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
I like that this film has theories.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't think there's anything really to like build out upon it, but it's like they got the lore of the different types of storm chasers. They got honestly, the other aspect is like it very much is treated like its own character, but the twisters themselves, I loved that it was in a Pacific Rim kind of relation of like, we got another one hitting. Oh shit, it's twins. Oh shit, it's a mega. Oh, like all the different types. It's like it almost was its own personality in a way.
Yeah, and they had the like, this is a Force 5. It's going crazy. Like there was a very much like you said, like a Pacific Rim. It's like, I don't know, like if any of that is scientifically, if there are actually like, I'm sure there's classifications.
Different categories. Yeah. F5s and all that stuff.
But yeah, the way they made it, just like these were twins, and they're like, like you said, it's the twins. It's it's a sci-fi. Like there's all these different crazy classifications and stuff in the movie. I did have a fun time with that instead, because it made every time they're chasing the twister a little bit fun and unique
and different. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I don't any last thoughts on twisters or on 4DX?
I have been chasing the feeling that this movie gave me from 4DX. I have since, I think, I tried no, I didn't. I was going to try another. I was trying to see if Sonic would be good, but I ended up opting out. And I've been wanting, this was such a good experience. It was so much fun. And maybe, I'm like trying to think of what I would look for. I'm like, maybe Fast and the Furious might hit. Maybe a Mission Impossible might hit, but maybe almost like a what's his name, Zemrick?
Roland
Emmerich. Yeah, doesn't he do all the huge
Roland Emmerich?
Moonfall
was my April Fool's last year, so that would be a good one. Just seeing the movie. That was gonna be my question: is if you could watch any movie in 4DX, what would it be?
Oh, easily. There's this one we bond over so much, and we've talked about what's it called? Speed Racer.
Oh, damn, that's good. That would be good, man.
I would lose my shit every time. All the tricks and everything.
Just racing around the track and stuff like that, and like when the thing pops, they would squirt water on your face. That would be good. I would love to see Speed Racer in 4DX. That'd be cool. I think that's a good one.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean Pacific Rim. Like, since you brought it up, I think that would be a pretty cool one. That could be, that might be my answer, honestly, is Pacific Rim, because I think just going around in the air, you're just like, dun, you just get punched and you go back or something. And there's a lot of scenes with rain. I think you got to make a good 4DX. You got to have rain at some point.
Weather changes.
Yes.
I'm almost scared. I feel like I'd have to like stretch and like brace myself. But in the vein that you're saying of the violence side of it, Borderlands hurt. Like I came out of that in pain. But if a movie went harder, like the movie The Raid Redemption, something like that, where it's just like martial arts up the wazoo with 4DX, I feel like could be an interesting experience. But I'd have to brace for that. But
Okay.
Speed Racer is my final answer.
Speed Racer, that's a really good answer. I wouldn't actually want to see it in 4DX, but I think it's my funny answer is Challengers, another movie that we talked about. Just like sweat coming at you, you know? Just like the ball is bouncing around and it's like da, 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 and you're just like going back and forth. I would not actually enjoy that, I don't think, because that's a great movie. But yeah, I think that would be funny.
That'd be an interesting one for sure.
But yeah, Kusrosh, this has been super fun. Thank you again so much for coming on and talking about this really, really unique movie experience. I was really trying to figure out what I wanted to do for my April Fool's Day thing. And then I saw something about Twisters and I was like, well, 4DX. And I remembered that I had seen it on your top 10 list in quotations in 4DX. And I had seen some other people talk about how specifically, I've never seen that before, where people are like putting it on their top 10 list, but only if you watch it this way.
Only the 4DX, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think well done. Good choice on that.
I'm glad when you think of April Fools, you think of me. The number one fool on podcasts.
I was like, who can match my level of being a fool? Because it's a high bar.
It is. Not many can attain to that and make that accolade. But us few at the top.
Yeah. But yeah, man, this has been truly a blast.
Always.
What else you want to let the people know before I get you out of here?
Well, as I said earlier, you can find me everywhere. You can find me at Cujo Prime on all platforms. I have my YouTube channel for the KJP show, youtube.com/@CujoPrime, and Save Point Stories on all podcasting services. Should be out at the time of this or very soon, so keep an eye out for that. And just to the listeners out there, you don't face your fears, you ride them.
Well, I want to get that shirt, because he's like in this movie he sells the shirts. I know you can actually buy them. Yeah, so I would absolutely love that. But yeah, thank you one more time for being on.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I've been on many of my shows. It's always a pleasure to have you. And thank you to all the listeners. I know some of you probably haven't seen this movie in 4DX. Hopefully we can give you some idea of what it was like to ride it. But, to anyone out there, if you're not subscribed yet, I would love you to subscribe. You give the show 5 stars. That really helps us get noticed. I also do a couple other things. Check out the show that comes out on opposite Mondays to this one, Midnight Film Society, where me and my buddy Damien discuss more recently released movies. And then check out my Patreon. If you want to sign up for as little as $3 a month, you can get access to bonus episodes on Underrated Disc 2, including the new podcast series that I'm doing right now called Across the Second Dimension. Before we jumped on mic and recorded this one, me and Kusrosh recorded one on Avatar, which will be out on the 15th, so just in about a week or so. If you want to hear us talk about more stuff about films in a specific format, listen to us talk about that and how it held up in 2D versus 3D. That was a lot of fun. You can find the links to all that below, along with all the links to Kusrosh's stuff. But Kusrosh, thank you one more time, and if you feel it, chase it.